Realistically, can climate change only ever be resolved by forcing humanity to change its behaviour?
Realistically, can climate change only be resolved by forcing people to change their behaviour? Adrian, it's tempting to come to you first, so let's go to you first.
Okay. Well, I don't like the use of the term forcing in that sentence, because if you look at the reasons why people at the moment choose to engage in forms of behaviour that are not best for the environment, then it's not a matter of whether they want to do that, but looking at the economic and social reasons why they do that. So, for example, if you look at the person who's having to pay more than 10% of their income in warming their home, and that's the definition of fuel poverty. You look at people who are in fuel poverty, the reason for that is very often that they're on a low income, they haven't got the money to insulate their home to ensure that that energy is not going out of the wall or out of the window. And if we as a society were taxing the oil companies more and putting that money into insulating people's homes for free, as we're seeing happening in parts of the country already following initiatives from green councillors, then we would see a situation where people were able to do what they would already want to do, lower their fuel bills, lower carbon emissions, and create jobs at the same time. So yes, we do need to change behaviour through changing the way the economy is set up, but it's about actually making it easier for people to live in a way they would want to live in. It's not about forcing them to do so. And there are plenty of other examples you could give along those lines. I'll just pick up one more before I ask to move on. And that would be that if you look at the relative price of train travel compared to flying for journeys where you could do either, so journeys within the UK, journeys to parts of the continent, for example, at the moment it's often cheaper to fly than it is to get the train, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever in environmental terms. The reason for that is that there's no tax whatsoever on aviation fuel, and the privatised rail companies are constantly increasing the prices of the tickets. It's the wrong way round. It should be we should have cheaper prices for the trains, more expensive prices for the planes, and the cost of the ticket should reflect the environmental good that it's doing. It's not about forcing, it's about the economy resulting in people being able to make the right choices.
Okay, so in a nutshell, it's about making things easier for people to change their behaviour. Okay,
Yeah.
so Phil, let's go to you next.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, I have to pick up Adrian on one point, though. I mean, it isn't just green councillors, I'm afraid, that are ensuring we've got this amazing amount of insulation going on. It's actually a national government fund that's enabled 1 million houses to be insulated so far this year. That's not done at council level. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. There's an awful lot the government can do to ensure that we tackle climate change that isn't necessarily about forcing people to do things. One of it is investing in large-scale renewable energy schemes. You know, we've got an amazing nation for wind power. That's where our investment should be going. 60% of applications for wind turbines to Tory council areas have been turned down. David Cameron has described wind farms as giant bird blenders. So, you know, there is a real problem about this. We've got to have national investment. We've got to have national investment in a Severn barrage, which could generate 18% of our country's electricity. We need investment in all these different things, a real mix of renewable energy projects. And that isn't forcing anyone to change its behaviour. They'll still get their electricity, but it's just coming from renewable sources. People do need to change their own personal behaviour as well, and I think we need to incentivise that, as of course we're doing. I think we need to shift taxes from positive things like work to negative things like consumption, and I'm sure that's probably something we'd agree on.
Prime Minister is saying a lot of emphasis is going to be placed on the Copenhagen meeting later on this year. Is he right to big it up, so to speak, in terms of actually getting precedents set?
No, he is, and I think it's excellent that he's going. I mean, we met our Kyoto commitments. We've signed up to the 10-10 campaign to reduce emissions by 10% next year. CO2 emissions, we're going to decrease them by 20% within 10 years. And I think those are we need to go further than that, and that's what the Copenhagen deal is all about, and getting every country in the world to sign up to those commitments.
All right, any comments at all on this question?
How do you respond to the suggestion, though, that many of the sort of green taxes you're talking about are really taxes on the poor? If you take sort of the London congestion charge, for example, you know, those who are very rich just pay it, and those people who previously, you know, were on the line now can't drive into London.
Thank you very much. Next comment, please. Comments at all? Just gentleman again at the front.
Yes, similarly, it's all very nice to talk about the things that people want to change and aren't able to at the moment. But there are actually things that people will have to change, things like flying. And if you just talk about having to increase the prices, then yeah, as the gentleman over there said, then you are forcing people to change, but you're only forcing the poor people to change. Perhaps we should be looking at more truthful solutions, which are about forcing everyone to change.
Thank you very much. Any other comments at all before we go to Chloe? Chloe?
There we are, the luxury of the last position again.
You will be first next time.
Well, no worries. I actually, to be very boring, I think there's a lot of agreement between us on this question. I do think it's very important, as the guys have said, to make it easy for people to go greener. That's clearly preferable than making it harder for people to go greener. But just to pick up the wording of the gentleman's actual question, which is about forcing humanity to change. And I think it's really important to not forget, actually, your use of the word humanity. That's pretty broad. The one thing we mustn't do, in addition to making it hard for people, as you say, on the line here in the UK, is make life significantly harder for people who are on the line across the world. And the people who are really going to suffer from climate change are, for example, the population of Bangladesh when the waters rise, the Maldives. There are some very, very serious questions of international development around this topic, and we must not forget those as we go into it. Just to add a few more bits and pieces, I think in our endeavours to make it easy for people to take these actions, we shouldn't actually reject the market. So I'm less comfortable with Adrian's terminology of changing the whole economic system for this. I think we need to work with the economic system to put those incentives in place. The final thing I would just perhaps ask, if I may hijack the floor for a second. Has anyone else here signed up to the 10-10 agreement?
A small proportion.
Interesting. Go and have a look at it when you get out of this room. There's a website which I think is 1010.com or something simple. But go and have a look. And actually, it's a personal commitment. This is the power of this thing. It's a personal commitment for you to reduce your own carbon emissions by 10% in 2010. Now, it's not easy. On my office wall, I've actually got the printout of how you can do this pinned up, and I'm worried about it. I'm not sure how I'm going to cut it by 10%, but I'm going to give it a good try. And I think it's actually incredibly important also that is taken very seriously as an expression of what people want, and people are willing to do it. The government needs to take that seriously. I'd also finally just highlight that last week in Parliament, one of the first debates I had the pleasure of taking part in actually, was a debate raised by the Lib Dems, so top marks to the Lib Dems for doing that, on the 10-10 concept, and asking the government to use its status as a very, very large public sector employer to enforce the 10-10 in its own estate, and the government voted it down.
What's your leader, David Cameron, going to do about green taxes then, in terms of measuring them? And tell us a bit briefly, if you would, about your party in terms of what it's actually going to do, because there's a comment there about how we see results and not actually taking taxes and seeing green results. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, I think in general principle, it's, as I say, what we've perhaps already covered. Things need to be made much easier for people. And I would like to see, I'm confident that we will see David, and I would like to see David Cameron going in the direction of taxes that promote the positive use of materials. I think that's fair to say. There's a number of other very serious things we can do, and actually for the record I'll also say that our policy is, as a party, that we do need a blend of energy, including wind turbines and including nuclear and including other things. That's the most concrete answer to your question in the time we've got.
Thank you. Okay. Any comments before we move on to the next question, because we're over halfway
I've really just got to correct one total inaccuracy on this. I mean, on the vote, we all know how Parliament works. The government wasn't willing to let that thing go through on a Liberal Democrat motion, but Ed Miliband made it absolutely clear the next day he totally signed up to 10-10 across all of government, and every Labour council has agreed to do that across England. There are a number of Tory councils, as you know. It's great that you've signed up to this, but there are a number of Tory councils that have said they won't.
I'll let you respond to that if you would like to very briefly, Chloe. And
I'm not going to bother, let's carry on.
And Adrian as well, if you want to respond very briefly, then we'll move on.
Well, I was going to respond to earlier points in this debate. Firstly, that Phil says a lot of good things on this, but in terms of the Labour government's record, we haven't seen investment in renewable energy. We have seen investment in new runways and new roads, and that has not been tackled properly. And in terms of whether we need changes to the economic system or not, at the moment we have an economic system that results in goods being transported in halfway around the world that could be grown locally, and local farmers' produce being undermined as a result. And we see an economic system where Britain literally swaps hundreds of thousands of tons of milk every year with other countries, literally swaps it, because the system encourages free trade for its own sake, not necessary and fair trade.
Thank you very much. We'll move on now to our next question. That's from Samuel Foster, or rather, let's go back to Samuel Foster for his answer, actually, to that.
Well, I'm not really sure what the answer is, as I say. I'm a historian, so I sort of, and when you study history, you learn that people are very, very concerned about these things often after they've happened. So that's really all I've got to say.